campus of Xavier University. WBOK 1230 AM.
Go.
An Equity Media Station.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Donald Trump is preparing to meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The former president said he'll meet with Zelensky today at Trump Tower in New York. Trump says he has a plan about negotiating the end of the war between Ukraine and Russia. New York City Mayor Eric Adams is set to be arraigned today on several federal corruption charges. The African-American mayor has been ordered to appear in federal district court in Manhattan at noon, that's Eastern Standard Time. He was indicted yesterday. Negotiations are set to resume today in the strike against Boeing by machinists. Members of the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers walked off the job 2 weeks ago after rejecting a deal that union leaders thought they'd approve. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and VINnews.com.
The following is a paid program and does not necessarily express the views or opinions of Equity Media, its management, staff, or affiliates of WBOK 1230.
Now, it's the Monitor's Mic with your host, Stella Cement.
Welcome to the Monitor's Mic, where we talk oversight, policing, and you. I'm Stella Cement, your host and the Independent Police Monitor for the City of New Orleans. And with me is Chriselle McGowan, our Deputy Police Monitor. This show is your go-to source for discussing policing, law enforcement oversight, and how it all impacts you. We're here to inform and empower you by unraveling the complexities of policing, updating you on the consent decree, and engaging in conversations with leaders, oversight partners, district station captains, deputy chiefs, community organizations working on policing issues, and more. From the Office of the Independent Police Monitor, we offer an independent perspective on city government. The Office of the Independent Police Monitor, OIPM, serves as a crucial civilian oversight body for the New Orleans Police Department, NOPD. We ensure transparency and accountability within the police department by making sure the NOPD follows their policies, abides by the consent decree, and is compliant with all local, state, and federal laws. Our office operates independently from the NOPD and the federal monitors, allowing us to provide an impartial perspective on police practices and investigations. What do we do day to day? We take complaints of officer misconduct from the public and from police officers. We renew, and we make recommendations to the we renew the Police Community Advisory Board recommendations. We review misconduct investigations conducted by the NOPD's Internal Affairs, which is called the PIB. We are on call 24 hours a day, every day of the year for officer-involved shootings and critical incidents, and we will monitor the scene from start to finish. We are advisory members of the Use of Force Review Board and the disciplinary hearings. We run the Community Police Mediation Program, and we engage the community to ensure your voice, opinions, and concerns are heard. We, your hosts, are not police officers, but experienced lawyers from the criminal justice field dedicated to transparency and accountability. We encourage you to call in with your questions, comments, and concerns. While we may not address individual cases, we're committed to following up with you. Now, before we introduce you to our guest today, which we're very excited to talk to, I just want to say a brief word about something that's kind of distracting, and I know was breaking news this morning, that the City of New Orleans joined with the Department of Justice to file a motion to enter into the sustainment period for our consent decree over the NOPD. So I apologize if I sounded distracted. That's been weighing on my mind. We're not going to be talking about those motions today. We are going to dive deeper into them in a later show, and we'll have an opportunity for you to be able to ask any questions you might have about this joint motion, about the attached sustainment strategy or plan that was a component of the motion, and the memorandum that was filed in support of the motion, and the public hearings that are to follow in the next 45 days, and eventually the fairness hearing that will occur in front of Judge Morgan. We want to give the community an opportunity to be able to get all the information that they want on these topics and be able to ask any question they might have and have their voice heard here on this show by our office and by all of the decision makers that will be weighing these issues moving forward. Today, though, we won't be able to go into the details of those motions and the consent decree, but we understand that it's probably on your mind and it's on ours as well.
Absolutely.
We assure you of that. And in the coming weeks, we will have more to say on this topic. But no decision will be made for longer than 45 days. So I'm letting you know that. So with that, let's learn more about today's guest.
So this week we are joined with SRO Calvin Day. Senior Police Officer Calvin Day serves as the School Resource Officer for the 4th District, where he has also trained new recruits as a field training officer. With over 12 years of experience in the New Orleans Police Department and 30 years of service in the U.S. Army National Guard, Officer Day is dedicated to both his community and his country. He graduated from John F. Kennedy High School in 1990. Officer Day plays a key role in community safety, often seen as the face of Santa Claus and McGruff, the crime dog, during local events. He focuses on creating a safer school environment and engages with kids in various settings, from nurseries to summer camps. He provides essential safety training and conducts drills to prepare students for potential threats. He also helps resolve conflicts among students and staff, mediating meetings with students, parents, and school officials to discuss issues and explain the law. When he's not on patrol, Officer Day takes part in school activities, attending graduations, sports events, and more. He volunteers on weekends, visiting churches and local events dressed as McGruff to share safety tips, distribute treats, and connect with the community. Additionally, Officer Day works part-time as a motorcycle and bicycle patrol officer. His hard work has earned him recognition as Officer of the Month and Officer of the Quarter for his commitment to public safety and community welfare in the 4th District. And just yesterday, I had the pleasure of seeing Officer Day receive an award for community service. Officer Day's goal is to build strong relationships with students of all ages and demonstrate resilience and adaptability in challenging situations. Welcome to today's show, School Resource Officer, Officer Day. We are very happy to have you here.
And Michelle, I think you misspoke. He is not necessarily the face or dressing up as any of these people, if there's any children listening. He's just a helper.
Yes.
To Santa Claus and just a helper
Correct.
to McGruff,
Correct.
the crime dog.
Yes.
Both of which are near and dear to our hearts.
I definitely remember McGruff and the crime dog growing up, and I have this, this dress that kind of looks like the trench coat, and I had to take a picture with McGruff just because of that. So let's go ahead and get started today, and we'll just dive right in there. And again, thank you so much for being with us, Officer Day. So, a lot of people actually don't know what a school resource officer actually is. Can you explain to us what do you do on a
Yes.
day-to-day basis?
Yes. As a school resource officer, we are like the liaisons between the police department and the school. What we do is we try to make sure that the schools are safe, so the kids have a safe environment where they can learn without any distractions. We also help solve any issues that's within the school, so it could continue to run as a school should without any interruptions.
And you're still basically a NOPD police officer, though, right?
Yes. I'm a police officer first.
Okay, so
Yes.
that's number one requirement to be a
Yes.
school resource
Yes.
officer is to be
Yes.
NOP. Okay, so how many schools are you assigned to? Do you work with multiple schools or just one?
Yes, I work in Algiers, the 4th District of the police department, and I have approximately 14 schools because some open, some closed due to the charter school system. So at this point right now, I have about 14 schools.
Wow.
That's a lot of schools.
Yes.
Wow.
And I also deal with nurseries. It depends on situations. I help out with nurseries too.
So is there like an assigned school that you go to every day, or do you kind of just go where needed, or how do you ascertain where do you have to go that day?
Well, it depends on if a school needs a certain thing, they'll normally call for me. But otherwise, if it's a more settled day, I just go pass by any school that I may have had an incident at recently just to check up on it or follow up on it. But there's no particular school I have to be at every day, but I'm required to attend all of the schools at some point.
Okay.
What does a typical day for a school resource officer look like?
Well, normally for me, if there's something that I was working on prior to, I'll go do a follow-up on it. Sometimes I'll go back to that school to follow up to see if there's more to it or if there's something else I could do to help whatever the situation is. If not, there's paperwork that I could finish up. Also, I connect the schools with other resources that help them with whatever I'm working on. Because a lot of times the schools will have something that, something that we were working on, and I may not have the answer right then.
Right.
So I would have to search for that answer and make sure I get back with them because I don't want to leave it unanswered.
So you kind of like research the issues and bring the solution.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I try not to leave anything open, because I have a lot of people that have questions, and if you leave it open, that leaves their mind to think something else. So I try to close that gap.
So with these 14 schools that you visit that are in your district, roughly how many students do you think are within all
Combined?
those schools? Yes.
That's a large number. Well, I would say on an average low number, most of the schools have at least 600 students.
Wow.
Our larger schools have 11 to 1,300 students.
And that's times 14
Yes.
that you're interacting with.
Yes.
Okay. So do they, and those 14 schools, they also include elementary, nurseries, you said, and
Yes.
high schools as well. So
Correct.
you're over all of those.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure if there was a difference between the elementary schools and the high schools to see if they had different resource officers, but you actually are available to all
Right.
of those.
Now, some of the schools actually have in-school resource officers, but they're not law enforcement. They're not NOPD officers. A lot of times I work with them because they help assist me with issues that happen in the school.
So it's a collaboration kind of
Yes.
thing. Okay. And do you think like your role as a student resource officer differs when you're working with elementary schools versus working with high schools, or it's all pretty much?
It's close to the same, but it's not actually the same. A lot of things that the high schools get into is a little different than elementary, but it's similar. But I would say they're different because elementaries you still have issues, but it's normally right at the 6th to 8th grade level. You might have high school activities happening in a younger school, but they differ to me because a lot of the kids at a young age, you can mentor them before they get into activities where a high school student already developed what they're getting into.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And if there was one thing that you wish the people listening would know about school resource officers, what would that be?
I would say that, excuse me, that we are parents too.
Oh.
So the kids that are under our observation is we want them treated the same way as anybody else. So I would never treat someone's child differently than I want my child treated. So whenever I have an issue at a school, I'm going to think of it in the parent aspect first. So I would understand how that parent would look at it. So I try to explain to them why I did what I did, so they would know exactly how it was done, so they won't feel some type of way about it.
And that's a good attitude to have because, especially, it's just simple. You always want people to treat you right,
Right.
as you would want them, as you would treat them. So it's kind of like what we talked about before, the golden rule, right? Or do unto others as you want them to do unto
Correct.
you. You don't want
Yes.
anybody mishandling your kids,
Right.
so you treat them with the same respect.
That's good advice for any other officers that are listening who might go into the field of being a school resource officer
Yes.
or other school resource officers that might be listening, your
Right, future.
coworkers.
Right.
Yeah, that they should remember, think like a parent first.
Right. It helps because it makes you treat everybody with respect.
It does, and it
Yeah.
also helps you remember that these are children.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what I was going to
Because
say.
Right.
if you're thinking like a parent first, you remember that you're working with kids.
Right.
Because I think sometimes that gap that ends up happening is when we start looking at kids as if they're bigger than they are, more
Right.
mature than they are, more capable than they are. And I mean that in a respectful way. Of course,
Right.
children have full personalities.
We
and
were once
perspectives.
kids as well.
But yeah, but we need to remember that they're not adults. They
Right.
should not be.
And they think about things a lot differently.
Correct.
Yes, they do. They really do. So let's find out about your thought process. Did you want to become a school resource officer?
At some point, yes. The laws are a little tricky with juveniles, so everybody have the little knack that they have for law enforcement. I love kids, so I love to mentor. So it worked for me, which I always like to talk a lot. So I'm always teaching. I'm always calling, hey, come over here, talking to a kid. So I said, well, let me try it out if it comes available. It came about. I didn't get it the first time, got it the second time, and I feel I'm doing well at it, so that's why I'm still here.
What was the process for becoming a school resource officer?
Well, at the time, we had commanders at the time. The commander wanted to know if you was a people person. You understand kid laws, student laws, you treat people with respect. You don't have a problem with interaction with staff and students. So there were other people that have the same qualities, so he allowed them to try first. And when I got the opportunity, it worked out for me. And plus, you have to go to training to be a school resource officer. So it's like a 2-week training that you go through, and it's very intense.
Can you tell us a little bit about what that training may entail?
It entails a lot on juvenile laws. Also, some of the tricks they have in school that you got to look for, so you don't pass it over. The dangers in schools, how to have your school in order where they know who to call, what process they need to take, what has to be available in the beginning. You know what I'm saying? Like if there's a threat to the school, what's the process? I need to have that paperwork before it even starts, so we won't be stumbling when something or if something was to happen. Also, they try to find out what kind of character you have in the class. Are you built to be a school resource? Forgive me. And it's basic laws after that, but that's pretty much it.
And you just spoke of something that caught my attention really about they wanted to see what type of character you had to be a student resource officer. So people are other NOPD officers that may be listening, what type of characteristics and what type of experience do you think that they should have when considering such an assignment?
I feel like you have to have a people person attitude, good at listening, problem solving, good at mentoring, because a lot of things come about that the average person like, man, I ain't got time for that. But I want to know what's causing this to try to fix it. So you got to be a problem solver. And my wife always tell me, you're always trying to fix something. You always trying to, and that's part of what I do all day. So if a staff member has something, a child has something, I'm always asking questions. And I try to get to the bottom of it, because if you leave that open door, it'll never close. I need to fix it so I can close this door. So I have a bad habit of trying to dig until I figure it out.
I would say that's not a bad habit.
I
but
don't
that,
think so either.
I think it's really valuable that you're asking more questions than you're talking, right?
Yes.
That's what I think is really important in this type of setting.
Right.
To be able to get to the bottom of a problem, as you're
Right.
describing.
Especially
You might not get it on the first question.
Right.
Right. Especially as a lot of times we try to solve issues without knowing the root cause. And
Right.
it's kind of like you put a Band-Aid on things but actually not resolving what's going on.
Correct.
So I commend you in trying to, actually get to the bottom of the problem and figure out what's going on before you just jump in and
Right.
throw something on it. Well, I do believe it's time for us to take a break, but I'm sorry. No?
Oh, sorry, we're getting a signal. Can we don't need a break? Okay, well, we'll just keep
Oh,
going.
sorry.
So, we asked you about what qualities make a good resource officer, but we haven't asked what experiences might be valuable or that you would recommend an officer have before considering an assignment at a school or an assignment as a school resource officer. What would you recommend to an officer that's starting out? What type of experience they should have prior to trying to put their hat in the ring to be a SRO?
Well, this may be going a little forward, but I kind of feel like if you have parenting, if you have a child, you kind of know how your child is or others, and it gives you experience with children, and it helps your understanding when they do stuff. So you don't just feel like every crime is just a crime. You know what I'm saying? There's sometimes you can fix the stuff before it actually get bad. And I feel like if being a parent or having a couple of years of parenting under your belt, it helps you with the experience with kids. Helps you understand, helps you keep up with the new lingo, the new trends, the new apps and all this stuff. So it kind of keeps you on your toes, and you know what's going on in the schools. So when they tell you about this new app, oh, this happened on the app, you don't know nothing about it. But if you have a child, you might know about the app because your child gonna know about it. And I think that helps the experience. Plus, doing police work on the streets helps you deal with the regular. So you deal with the families, know what the backgrounds are, how some of the households are different from others. There may be a traumatic event in one house and another house is beautiful. Then that child has to come to school and deal with whatever problem they had with at home. So being able to go to someone's house and see this, you can understand why this child is acting out at school. They're acting out because they're having trouble at home. They can't sleep. Something's going on at home where they got to stay up the whole night, and when they come to school, they want to go to sleep. So I think having time on the street and experience with children at home or children near you helps with the experience.
That's really good to know. And I think you're highlighting the importance of not seeing everything in a vacuum.
Right.
You have to understand the landscape through which these children and schools exist.
Yes.
So let's talk about the larger landscape. We would like to explore some of the public perceptions around having police officers in school. So first, are you familiar with the school to prison pipeline concept?
A little, but it'd be better if you explain what part of it you're trying to talk about.
Sure, of course. So what we're referencing is a sociological idea that that what happens in school, if we criminalize school activity, then children are more likely to get funneled into the criminal legal system. So every single time you take disciplinary action against students in schools, or you seek to call 911 or put kids in handcuffs, you're opening up a possibility that that student is going to be more likely to be eventually incarcerated or prosecuted or continue to be arrested. And you're more or less putting this child on a pathway that's going to, again, funnel them towards a system that we don't want to see them involved in. And so there's been a movement to try to limit police interaction on campuses, to limit police presence on campus. So do you think having an SRO could potentially contribute to this idea of a school to prison pipeline?
My answer to that is no.
Interesting.
And my reasoning is
Yeah, we want to hear.
being in the school allows you to interact with a student, right? So if that student is having issues, you are there to mentor and guide them. So if they're going down one path, you are there to help correct that path. Versus, oh, I'm going to just let you do what you're doing, do it wrong, and then put you in jail. That's not what I'm there for. I'm here to try to correct it so in the long run it doesn't end up that way. You can come to the police and you could talk to me. I don't want you to feel like, oh, I don't mess with the police. Well, I'm here all the time. Hey, Officer Day, how you doing? Hey, son, how you doing? And they'll come talk to you just because you are, you're reachable. You're right there. Let me see if I can say something to them. And then sometimes I get information from them that they wouldn't share if I wasn't in the school.
Now that is a valuable reminder that children, we often talk about kids, and we've talked about this before on the show, the idea that kids are the problem that we're trying to solve for.
Right.
Instead of seeing kids as part of the solution.
Right.
And the solution to public safety concerns, because kids want to be in a safe place.
Right.
And having an officer that they trust, readily available to them, that they could go to, could really help.
Right.
And the other thing is, having someone that they trust could also mean somebody that they could talk to about what's happening at home, as you
Correct.
previously described. And that might not be information that they feel safe sharing
Right.
otherwise.
And it happens a lot.
And it does happen a lot.
Yes.
So in your opinion, do you think your presence on school campuses increases or decreases the likelihood of an arrest of a student?
In my opinion, it decreases because in most cases they feel like the police are already here. If I do something wrong, they're already here. But a lot of times after talking to some of the kids, a lot of times the crimes that they get involved with, they try to hide at school. And if the police is there, they're going to try to even harder to try to keep that away from the police. But again, being a mentor, if I know they're getting into something, I want to talk to you. That way, some of them that's really not part of the thing, but they're getting involved in it, they'll try to find an out, and I'm their out. So they'll talk to me, and I'll talk to their parents. We get together, and we get them out that situation. So I think SRO being in the school decreases that.
That's really good to know. That's a really helpful perspective. So we would like to know more about the relationships that might exist between SROs and students. Do you think that students trust you?
Some, yes. I think it depends on their experience with the police or their family's experience with the police.
Fair.
Because I have students who may say, I don't mess with 12. I don't mess with the police. But they've never had a bad experience with the police. So my question would be, why you have a problem with the police?
Past
Oh,
down
they put
trauma.
my uncle in jail. They always used to come to the house. But we don't know what the uncle did to get put in jail. It's like we don't just select people and say, we're going to throw you in jail. So when I explain that to them, and they'll come ask more questions. After a while, they're shaking my hand in the morning. You know, they're asking me questions about jobs. They're asking me questions about the police department. So they get comfortable with the police, which is why we're in the school, so we could bridge that gap that the police ain't just out here to arrest people.
How could you describe some of these strategies? I mean, you kind of touched on one that you're just available to answer questions,
Right.
and you're there to kind of you let them push back, you let them challenge you, but you just keep providing information, and eventually, a friendship or something is built there.
Right.
What are some of your other strategies for how you develop trust with students?
Well, we also have events. I play basketball with them. Have little small rap sessions with them. I'll whatever sport they like, I talk to them about it. Go out to their games. Sometimes I work the games, and then when I see a certain play, I call them. I say, "Man, that was great." Talking to them, and after a while, they start. "You coming to the game, Officer Day?" "Yeah, I'm be there." Sometimes I go and I'm not even working it. I just go just to be going. Because certain kids want somebody to be there to see them play, and I'll try to be there to support them.
That's awesome. So it kind of sounds like you're tasked with being a law enforcer, an educator, and an informal counselor. How do you balance being empathetic to student needs while also having to be a cop?
Well, it is like I said before. When you're mentoring, you can talk to them all the time. I don't have to change being a police officer. I'm just being a father in a sense. So being a dad, I can separate the two and talk to the kids, explaining them what's going on, why I'm doing what I'm doing. And most of the times, they already know what the police do. So that side of it is what it is. But when you talk to them, become man to man, human to woman, or however you want to look at it, they understand that the barriers between the two is I can speak to him. I can say how I feel without him reacting as a police officer. So it's not that hard for me. It doesn't feel that hard for me to be able to separate the two and still do a good job.
So it sounds like you pretty much just be yourself.
Yes, pretty much. Yeah.
So I heard you talk a little earlier about, students having problems in the home and speaking to their parents. So does your work as a school resource officer, is it limited to what happens on campus?
No, it's not. I'm supposed to react to what's on campus. I'm supposed to create things on campus, but there's a lot of activity that happens outside the campus that comes to the school. Mm-hmm. There can be a traumatic event that happens with a child, and it comes to the school like a shooting or something, and that child comes to school, and it's thought that somebody might come looking for them at the school.
Okay.
So now the concern is the safety of everybody. Or it may be something domestic, and the parent or someone comes to the school for that child, and they have something on at home. Now you have to keep that child safe from whatever incident happened at home. Right. Then you have the internet. Everything that happens on the internet happened over the weekend, but Monday morning is going to come to the school.
Right.
And I still handle that because now that you brought it to me, I got to do something about it. Right. I'm not going to just let you leave here and then something happened to you, and I already had an opportunity to do something about it. So, yes, a lot of the outside comes into the school, and I still handle it.
One thing I can say at this age, I am grateful that we didn't have access to phones and internet like we do now.
Right.
Because everything, even it's not just happening face to face. You're dealing with things that may be happening on the internet, and like you said, now we're fussing about something on the internet, but now we're both in the school.
Right.
So it comes there.
Yeah, and chat groups.
Oh gosh, yes. So, Officer Day, tell us, what do you do when school is out of session?
When school is out of session, I do a lot with summer camps, still with students. They have swimming programs. We'll go there and help them with the swimming programs. We have summer programs where we have different officers come out. Mm-hmm. We have the K-9 come out, SWAT team come out, show their vehicles. Motorcycles officers come out with their motorcycles. Mounted patrol come out with their horse. and we, explain stuff to them and let them touch them and let them play with the little knobs and whatnot, the lights, and so they could get comfortable and see what it is we do every day. We do different stuff like trunk or treats, as Halloween, Christmas. We have Santa come by. They come there. We give out gifts and whatnot, and let Santa give out some of his gifts, and it doesn't end. I love it.
So when the motorcycle unit comes out, are you usually excited to show, the students that, look, I do this too?
Yes, yes. Because some of them, you'll be surprised how much they know. They'll be like, "Oh, this is the such and such button." I'm like, "How you know that?" Could it be some young kids, real young kids? And I'm like, "How you know that?" And I love it because that means someone is showing this child this.
Right.
They're seeing these things. That means someone is talking to them and they're getting these experiences somewhere. So the ones who doesn't have that experience, at least we're getting to touch up on it, and it may draw interest from them, and from there they may grow from it.
Right, because the sad reality is a lot of children don't have access to a lot of things, and they don't get to see a lot of things.
Right.
They're stuck in the same little bubble.
Right.
So when they get to experience these other things that you're showing them, like even something as simple as a motorcycle, that might be something that they never experienced before.
Right.
So, what role do you play in the schools in emergency preparedness and safety drills?
Well, sometimes schools will have drills to see how the students and the staff will perform. We'll go there and interact with them and see if they're doing them correctly, or if there's some things that could change, or there's some errors we've seen that might be corrected, so it'll help better in a real situation. We have trainings with schools where it's a lockdown drill.
And what does that mean? Sorry, just for anyone who's unfamiliar with a lockdown.
It's almost like say you have an active shooter.
Okay.
What's your job? What you supposed to do in an active shooter? Go in the classroom, lock the doors. Well, I don't want to tell everything that they supposed to do.
Yeah, right.
So we follow through the school and inform the staff of what we see that's creates a problem.
Okay.
And it gives them an opportunity to correct it, and at a later date, they'll practice it again.
Nice.
So the better you are at it, the more it becomes easier to you if it actually happens.
Yeah. And that's really where you want people to be. You want it to be a rote thing, muscle memory. So that way you're not making too many decisions when you're in that state of, I imagine, fear or panic.
Right.
You want people to be prepared for
Right.
something hopefully they never have to use.
Correct.
Right.
Muscle memory. You
Yeah.
have a muscle memory where it just happens.
And it just brings you back to all we ever did was hurricane drills, really, growing up. So it shows you how much,
Right.
unfortunately, times have changed. And
Yeah,
what we
that
have
was
to
the
be prepared
culture at
for.
the time. The culture was dealing with hurricanes. So
Right.
now we have
And fire.
active
That's-
shooters, and yes.
And as a Californian,
Earthquakes.
earthquake. Everything for me was earthquake.
Right.
Thank
But
goodness.
yeah, I mean, it's good to know that you're helping everybody feel more comfortable with what could be the worst thing.
Right. That we hope would never happen.
Yeah. And we got a comment. Good job, Officer Calvin Day, on
Thank you.
our Facebook. Thank you so much.
Okay, and then Officer Day, I know a lot of times you may have to deal with students that are truant. What resources, or do you have any resources that you provide them to help reintegrate them into the school environment?
Yes. Normally I talk to social workers, find out what's going on with the child, make home visits, find out if there's something going on at home that's causing this issue. It could be a miscommunication. It could be they can't get transportation. It could be the parent isn't home regularly enough for them to get to school. And when we find out the problem, we try to find a solution. So once we get that information, we try to help the child, because some parents don't have money for clothing.
Right.
So schools sometimes are strict on their rules, and if you don't have a uniform, you can't come there. So the child won't come to school. So we'll put the money up front, get the children some clothes so they could come to school. So
That sounds like an awesome like support system to have as a backup. Because I mean, you're absolutely right. Resources aren't always readily available for every student as it is for the other. So it's kind of great that they have someone there, generally just to meet them where they're at.
Right.
So you're in the Fort District
Yes.
for your SROs, but how important do you think it is to understand the neighborhood and communities that you're serving?
It's very important. Knowing your community, you know the culture of the community, you know the background. Certain areas are different from others. You know the activities being held in one area versus another. So you know how to respond to different behaviors based on where you're coming from. Sometimes being the tough guy in the neighborhood, being the tough guy at school comes from being in that neighborhood. And sometimes making house calls, going to the house makes a difference. You know, you talk to the parent and they may be acting that way because they're just around friends. But at home, they don't act that way, and at school, they don't act that way. So you try to connect with them to see what it is you can do to help out, and that varies based on the community they're coming from.
And I just want to point out something. You mentioned house calls many, many times today. On average, about how often do you think you make house calls?
That's a good question. Yeah, I was wondering
Yeah.
the same.
It's not a whole lot. Sometimes the social workers will ask us to do it because there's an issue in school or there's an issue that they're not coming to school. But sometimes you may know a student and you ain't see the student in a little while, and you ask about them, and you're like, well, they ain't been to school in a minute. Then you just go check, go knock on the door to find out what's going on, because it could be something simple that could be fixed for that child to come back to school, or they could just be sick and the information not get back to the school. So I make house calls when needed, but I also help other SROs in other districts. Like, they may have a student that lives in my district, but their school is in the other SRO's district. They'll call me and ask me, can I go pass over there to see what's going on, because nobody can get in contact with them.
You know, I think you also hit on something that's really valuable with understanding the community that your schools are located in, because we are in a charter-based system.
Yes.
So all of our charters might operate on different school schedules. They might have different activity schedules. And because they're charters, they might not even know who is the principal at a school just a couple blocks over.
Right.
And in a lot of ways, you're a lifeline. You're like a center of the spoke,
Right.
where you are the person talking to all the different schools on the West Bank, and you can relay information, you can do information sharing, you can help with some of that communication when we are looking at issues that might cross campuses
Right.
and cross neighborhoods within your community. You could be the one that bridges those gaps,
Right.
because there is some disjointed elements to having a charter-based system.
Right. Because sometimes you have a sibling that goes to a different school than you.
Right.
And they may need to connect with that other sibling, and they could reach out to me, and I'll make sure it happens.
That's
Yes.
wonderful. That's
Yeah.
great. That's really great. I didn't think about that until you were talking about understanding the community through which you're working in.
And also, Officer Day, because I can tell that you pay attention to your students that you interact with. What have you learned from their interactions with your students?
I've learned a lot. I've learned that that the kids are different now than before. And it may be a couple of years, and the kids that was doing something 3 years ago, it's a whole different set now. You'd be like,
Never
wait,
change.
what is this? Like, they learn quickly. So as time changed, the kids changed. But I do know that the kids of today, they want stuff fast. They want it to happen right now. So I if I can, I get my hand on them, like, slow down. Don't try to grow up fast, because when these bills start hitting, they start hitting. So take your time in growing up, enjoy your childhood, and it's going to come in time. But yeah, the kids are very things are very fast for them now. Like they want to live like everybody else. Social media is telling them you need to make $1,000,000 today.
And wait till they grow up to figure out it's not that easy.
Right. And that's what they want. They want it right now. And at the time, it may just be something simple as having a certain type of headphone, because everybody's talking about it. They want it too, So some are willing to get in trouble for it to get it. So the friends will like them for it. So the everything's fast paced, whereas I had to wait till Santa brought it for me. Christmas I might get it for Christmas. Christmas be something different for them. They want it now.
Right.
So this generation, they want it fast.
They do. They do. And a lot of how they live is also fast and public.
Right.
A lot of public
Everything's
living.
on social media.
Everything is public.
Yes. So, Officer Day, I know you're a father too, right?
Yes.
And of course, you raising your kids and you know them. But being an SRO, has that changed your perspective at all on young people in New Orleans? Because now you have a whole host of children
Right.
that you see every day.
No, I love it because it's a challenge. Because I've always felt like if you pay attention, you listen, you should be able to adapt. So kids are different than when I raised mine. That means I have to adjust to see how I can reach the ones that's coming up now. Because the ones that's 5 and 6 now, in another 5, 6 years, they're going to be completely different than the ones I'm talking to now. So I love the challenge with that.
So, speaking of challenges, can you give us an example of a time that you've ever worked with school administrators or school leadership to try to solve a problem?
Yes. There was a time where they had I guess you want to say a gang fight, group fight. And these set of boys just kept fighting each other. And the school didn't know what to do, just kept fighting each other. So I said, let's call a parent of each student. And we had a mediation with each parent, each student. Got to the bottom of why it was happening. Turned out it was something simple, real simple. And them fights stopped. And most of them, once their parent knew, because they was doing this and their parents didn't know. But once their parent was notified of what was going on, and a lot of mamas don't play, and they start embarrassing them in front of all the other kids. This is what you doing, blah, blah, blah. Next thing you know, all the fights stopped. And all it took was sitting down, getting to the bottom of it, and that was it.
So, how do you handle parents that aren't going to be satisfied with mediation? And now I'm kind of being selfish with this question because I used to work at the school district. I actually used to run the student hearing office,
Okay.
the Recovery School District. And sometimes a big challenge we had to restorative practices was that some parents said, no, I want to see the other kid in handcuffs for what they did to my child. How do you navigate those moments where people aren't looking for you to be a mediator? They're like demanding
Right.
that you criminalize, that you put
Right.
someone in handcuffs.
I get that a lot. But at the end of the day, I determine what actions I'm going to take. So I feel like as long as I explain to you why I'm doing what I'm doing, in most cases, they calm down. They may not agree, but they calm down about it and they accept it. Sometimes they get mad and want to file a complaint, but I'm willing to take that complaint because I'm not doing nothing wrong to anybody. I'm being fair across the board. So at the end of the day, if my explanation isn't good enough, that's the best I could do. But I am very good at talking to people. So most parents, as long as I could get them by themselves and talk to them, it normally resolves itself after that.
That's great. That's great. And when you're handling these incidents that might happen on school property, how do you ensure that the focus remains on education and the discipline that has to result rather than law enforcement? Is there like a different way that you...
Yes. Our policy is take the least amount of punitive action as possible. So if it's something minor, we allow the school to handle it because the school actually disciplines the child themselves. So why discipline them twice for something minor? So it's about getting the education, not about putting somebody in jail. So let them do their little 3 to 5 days or whatever, come back to school, hopefully it's corrected, and get back to your education.
That's great. So if you had a magic wand and you could wave it, if you ruled the world, what are some improvements or changes that you would recommend that could enhance the effectiveness of SROs in schools?
I feel as if the parents would listen to the SROs, and not necessarily take our side, but listen and explain to their child or discipline their child based on what's happening, because I'm not there to pick on anyone. If I tell you or call you and say this is what happened with your child, blah, enforce that. You know, I'm not saying child abuse.
No.
I'm just saying.
No one is ever saying child
never
abuse.
saying child
Let's be
abuse.
very
I'm just
clear.
saying enforce some rules in your home
Right.
to whereas it's backed up, so when you come to school, you can't get away with it at home.
Right.
So instead of coming to the school fussing at the staff or me about what we're doing to your child, this, that, and the other, find out what's going on, listen, and then talk to your child about it. Because sometimes all it takes is just a little quick talking, and the child gonna get it.
Right.
But they feel like they're getting away with it because their parents don't know.
Their parents don't know, or their parents
Don't care.
Right.
And you know, we're not trying to point fingers at
Right.
parents.
Neither am I. Right.
Yeah, because a lot of parents are we're all on the same team,
Right.
right? That's what we want to be, and we're all swimming in the same direction. But there are those times occasionally where you have a parent that's like, I taught my kid never back down from a fight. I taught my kid, if you're going to get called out, get ready to fight behind your name. And you know, I've talked to parents who've literally said, you're trying to make my child a punk on Twitter, a punk on Instagram.
Right.
You know, my kid has to man up, woman
Right.
up, whatever, and fight.
Right.
And whenever you hit that type of obstacle, man.
And there's
Right.
also the parents that just believe that nobody can tell their children anything.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
About anything.
And I
About
get it though, but you know, everyone is protective of their child.
Right.
Yes.
You know,
Right.
if my child told me, oh, they doing me this, of course I'm gonna believe them, but I want to know what part you played in that.
That's a big
You
part.
know what I'm
right
saying?
there.
Because a lot of times they leave that out, and the parents just react on what's happening to their child, but not listening to what part their child played into that
Right.
reaction. So you'll get there and find out their child had something to do with it. Then at that point, turn to your child and fix the problem that we
Right.
had that started this. So that's all I'm asking. I'm not saying don't be mad about stuff that happened to your child,
Of
because you, as a parent, you should.
Right.
I don't want nothing to happen to my child. But at the end of the day, we are here to make sure they have a safe environment, that they grow up and be able to do the same things we were able to do and do it better.
Oh, that's great. I mean, it's an important reminder to ask questions. Be curious
Yes.
first.
Right.
Judgmental second.
Right.
And my mom used to always say, you know, I know my child. A lot of people she would always, just like you, like, what part aren't you telling me, Kershaw? There's
Right.
something, what did you do to lead
Right.
up this part? But in other situations, of course, when something was said, she'd be like, no, that's not my kid. If you told me she did this,
Yeah, I've
then
heard
okay.
that a lot. Yes.
But, you know, it's great to know your child as well and talk to them
Right.
and see exactly what's going on.
Right.
So tell us, what is the most challenging part for you about being an SRO?
I would say the most challenging part is hearing some of the stories and having to kind of, in a sense, hold it in so it don't affect you and your family. Because the things that some of the things that come into the school that happen to the children, and you have to go home and think about, what if this was happening to your child,
Right.
and this child has to deal with this on a regular basis and still come to school and learn. So You got to compartmentalize these things and try to make everything seem normal when you see the trauma that these kids are going through, and you can only do so much because it's not your child. Right. And they have to go home to someone, or something's happening somewhere else, and you can only do so much.
And I can imagine that's not an easy task.
No.
You're really hitting on something so important, this idea of secondary trauma in our law enforcement officers and in all of our first responders and people that are working with youth, working with families, just working with people.
Yeah.
Real fast, what's your self-care? How do you make sure you don't burn out?
My family. My wife and my children, they make me happy. Like,
That's
when I go home, I got peace.
That's a blessing.
I have peace at home.
Not everyone has peace.
I don't have to deal with the streets and then go home and have more drama. I don't.
Right,
No, I
right.
go home and I have peace. Matter of fact, me and my wife going to happy hour.
So what's the most rewarding part for you?
For me, it's to see a student that left a school that one of my schools, and I see them and they recognize me and they're doing well. Like, they be like, hey, Officer Day, I'm going to college at Southern. I'm going to college at Grambling. I'm doing this. I'm in the band. That makes me feel so good. Or if they got a good, little job. You don't have to be a great job, just a start. When they say, I'm working at Popeyes, good. That means you're on the track of doing something good versus just, I ain't doing nothing. I'm sitting on the couch. And sometimes that may be the case because it may not be your turn to get where you're going yet. But just to hear those good stories make me feel good.
And I can tell because right now you're actually beaming like a proud
I
father.
know.
Right.
You're smiling. You're smiling.
Right.
You're like, any job. Yes, let's do it. You're smiling.
I love kids.
That's wonderful. So you hear that? Anybody on the West Bank, if you see Officer Day walking on the street, y'all should let him know what you're up to because he wants to hear it.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. We really appreciate you taking time out of your 14 schools
Right.
for
right.
us to actually come and sit down and talk to us for this hour. But, that wraps up today's show on the Monitor's Mic. And I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to all our listeners for tuning in and staying engaged with the crucial conversations we're having about police oversight and community safety. And a special thank you again to Officer Day for your time and invaluable insights you shared. I definitely learned a lot about SROs that I didn't know that I was very
Beautiful.
curious about. So I appreciate you for that. But if you missed any part of today's show or want to catch up on past episodes, visit our website at www.nolaipm.gov. You can find us and follow us on YouTube at NOLA IPM. You can also follow us on social media for updates and news. On Instagram, it's NOLA OIPM, but on Facebook, it's New Orleans Independent Police Monitor. So until next time, stay informed, stay involved, stay committed to building a safer community. I'm Kershelle McGowan with Stella Cement, and this has been the Monitor's Mic. Thank you again, Officer Day.
Thank you for having me.